All right, guys, so we're back on this billabong which had the rear mould with the joint in it. Now, I put up that video and heaps of people were reaching out to me saying, oh, I hope you're actually going to fix it. So, look, it wasn't on our scope of works to fix this, but we did find the issue and I did call the customer, run it by him and say, what do you want us to do with it? And he said, look, if you can do it while it's here, fix it. So, we brought it back into the shop. We're going to rip this mould off all the way down here, up the whole thing, right up to where we can join it up there. And we're going to make a new mould, and I'm going to show you us doing it as well. So what we're going to start with doing is he's already done it, but you got this rubber infill which runs right around the Caravan there. We just rip that infill out. So we're going to go and take every screw out. So it should be screws roughly every 300 or so, normally on every Pittsburgh joint. We'll take all of those screws out and then we'll go ahead and peel the mould off. So I'll show you in a sec how easy the mould is to come off, and yeah, we'll go from there. Cool, so we are starting to peel the mould off. I just peeled it back a little bit and I thought I'll show you the video of us doing this lower section and then I'll get the guys to rip it all off while I'm in the office doing some office work. So it started pretty easy. I just got a screwdriver in the end there and just peeled it back and then just peeled it with my hand. But then what we're going to do, because we don't want to, while peeling this off, we don't want to be too forceful with it because the silicone is going to be adhered pretty well. It doesn't look too badly sealed. But we don't want to damage any of these sheets on the side. So the last thing we want is that sheet getting damaged. So I just grab a Stanley blade and we'll get a bit of flex on there, run down the side, and work it back the other side too, give that a bit of a cut. Sort of just work back and forth. Eventually the silicone will just work its way out and you'll see there, we can peel it down a little bit more. Perfect, so when we get down to the bottom here, you'll see there'll be a little bit of silicone, but this checker plate, so we're not as likely to damage it. So we can just go and rip that mould down. Perfect, we got one section off, and I'm going to leave the other section to the other guys, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how they're going to clean all this silicone up. That's the fun job. Okay, so whole mould is off now, and we got Mitch here cleaning up all the silicone. Now this is not my job. I don't normally do this ever. So, but I'll show you what we're doing. Now, Mitch has a sharp chisel, and he's using that on all the sections that are underneath the mould, making sure that he doesn't go near the body of the mould. He's just running up, taking the big bulks of the silicone off. Last thing we want to do is scratch the Caravan. So he's making sure that he's just taking off the big chunks, so then we can come over it with a nice sharp plastic scraper after. Up the sides, we'll use a plastic scraper. Only on where the silicone is. You'll see here, I'll come up, obviously get a big chunk of it out of the way. But yeah, we're just gonna scrape that silicone off like that, and then we'll come back over it, getting all the extra stuff off. Now we want to use a plastic scraper on this because we don't want to dent any of this aluminium. So yeah, look, this is probably the worst part of Caravan repairs, is getting rid of old silicone. And it is a question I get asked all the time. What do you guys use to get rid of silicone? So I say a lot of man hours or girl hours. When I used to do this a lot, I don't do it so much anymore. I would normally just work in section by section. Pretty much like what I've just done there, getting it all cleaned up. Now you'll probably find if you're doing this at home, you'll probably want like a belt sander or a grinder so you can constantly sharpen these because they go blunt all the time. And we know that silicone is an absolute bitch of a product to get off and get clean. So let's do this section as well. So I've done 2 sections there. So you can see there, those bits are nice and clean. And obviously they still need to go over it with a microfiber and a rag and get all that little bit of residue that you can see the dark stuff on there. You can see there if I rub my dirty hands on it. So that'll all come off with methylated spirits and a nice clean. Now you can see here, starting at the bottom, checker plate, even worse to clean up, all the way up to the top. There's a lot of silicone that has to be scraped off. So you got to think that's why when you're getting your Caravan molds replaced, why they're so expensive. Not only do we have to seal the new mold on, supply the mold, do all of that sort of stuff, there's hours worth of labor of sitting there scraping off silicone. So it is pretty labor intensive. So we'll keep, Mitch here will keep working on this. He's going to scrape all of, you got to think, oh, look how fat that bead of silicone. He's got to work all the way up or on that backside there. He's got to do all of that. He's got to do all of the side and get it perfectly clean to satisfy me. So, because if it's not clean enough, they're not going to put a mold on there. So if you do leave excess residue of silicone on, so if you're doing it at home and you're leaving bulk bits of silicone on there, the new silicone's not guaranteed to stick to the old silicone. So you could also have potential water leaks coming from that. So if you're going through as much effort as ripping the whole mold off, you want to do it properly. Spend the extra time on there, get your prep work all absolute perfect. So then when you put your new mold on there, we know it's going to adhere. The silicone's going to ooze out everywhere. It's going to be fully sealed and you're not going to have any problems down the track. So you can see down the bottom here, this is the part I hate the most, and I think every tech hates the most, is cleaning silicone off checker plate. As you've got your checkers there. So you've got to work in between your checkers. Now sometimes we do have like little plastic Stanley blades as well for this, which some of the guys like to use, but I refuse to do it because it's not my job. I've done my sentencing of scraping silicone. I don't need to do it anymore. Years and years of it. But you can see there, it's just the crappiest stuff to work around checker plate. You can see that. It's a little bit cleaner, but we'll come over with that with some metho, get it all nice and clean. Now, somebody also is probably going to say to me, you can use WD-40 or some sort of oil-based sprays that you can spray on here, which would dilute the silicone enough to be able to scrape it off because it goes a little bit softer. You're right, you can do it. We don't do it, and I don't recommend doing it. It's perfect if you have a little bit of residue, on the side of the Caravan, you want to spray it on there and scratch it off. It works really, really well. But doing it on these areas is really important that you don't, because if you spray oil spray or some sort of silicone spray or something all over the body of the Caravan here, and when you come to do your mold, you don't get it clean enough, and you've got oil residue on there, silicone's never going to stick to it, and you're going to be redoing the whole job yourself again. So, yeah. All right. Well, look. He'll get it all cleaned up and we'll come back and show you when it's all done. You having fun?
No. Morning at home.
Okay, so we're back on the second day. Now that did take him all afternoon to clean that up yesterday. And then a little bit more this morning. So we got Josh down here on the floor. He's starting to make the new mold. So he's dry fitting this mold. There's no silicone there. He's just starting at the bottom, screwing it all up into the timbers underneath. And then he'll cut all the relief cuts in there, roll it around that 90-degree angle at the bottom there, roll it all around the top, and then we'll pull it all off and we'll have the mold dry, or the dry made basically, so ready to seal on. So now we've taken the mold back off the Caravan, so we know exactly where our angle's got to be down the bottom. Now Josh is just using an angle grinder to relief cut the joint so we can get a nice tight angle there, and it's going to be a perfect 90-degree angle. Now we have used, I know someone's going to say use a hacksaw or something. We've used everything. This works best for us, so this is what we use. It's neatest, it gets us the best join, and it's accurate majority of the time. So. Okay, so we want to make sure that the mold is thoroughly cleaned, so any decontamination is done. Same with the body over here. We've got Luke here, he's methoing everything, making sure that it's all thoroughly clean. Now we got all the silicone off. Obviously that was all done yesterday, and then after it was methoed, but then we're going over it all now and methoing it just so any fingerprints, oil from fingerprints and stuff like that is taken off. So this, you want to do this stage basically right before you lay your silicone. And you want to make sure it's very thorough. So the thing is, if you miss this stage, this is where you're going to get your delamination in your silicone down the track, and that's where it's going to be separating and letting water in. Because one of the surfaces that's not clean is going to separate, and the water's going to flow straight into there because the silicone's not adhered to it. So we're using, Josh just said, I'm going to use this one. You can see here, it's obviously old, we've had it for a long time. Josh said, just because everyone in the comments of the last videos keep going, why don't you use an electric gun? You guys need to invest in an electric gun. So he's like, well, I'm going to pull out the electric gun just to be a smart ass. So I said, all right, for sure. But look, we don't normally use the electric for this. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. It is quicker, definitely. Yeah, less control. See, like that, right there. That's why I don't like using the electric gun, because you get gaps in there, and those gaps there give you air bubbles. So you don't want that. When you're sealing a mold, you want to have full silicone side to side, sort of like this here. If you've got those gaps there and you go and install your mold without filling those gaps in, it's going to create an air bubble underneath there, and that's what will eventually be your worst enemy with water. So, because all you takes, if you've got the big air bubble there, all you've got is this tiny little thin piece of sealant on the side there. If that lets go, you've got water coming straight into your frame. So before the guys do, put the mold in, Josh just said, we're gonna fix it. They'll go and squirt silicone all into that to make sure it's all smooth as well. So. Now I can see at the top there, this might be a little bit difficult, but the panel is pulled away slightly from the body. You'll notice in a sec, Josh is going to put silicone in that gap there, so when the mold goes on, it's going to glue that panel back to the frame as well. And then you're not going to have any weird bowing looks in your panel. Another thing, we use a shitload of silicone. People always go, you use way too much silicone, look at that wastage. But look, we want to do the job once. We don't want it coming back in a year's time. We don't want it coming back in a 6 months' time because we didn't use enough silicone the first time. So look, there is a hell of a lot of wastage, but we're doing it the right way the first time. Okay, so you can see the guys, they've put the mold up into place now and screwing it in, fixing it all into place. Now making sure that they don't over tighten any of the screws. They want to have a nice straight mold. They don't want the mold looking like the ocean. And they have made sure that when they're handling the mold that they didn't get their fingerprints on the back side of the mold. You don't want any oily residue from your hands on any clean surfaces. Obviously on the front side of the mold is fine where it's not getting the silicone on there. You can see Josh there, he's tapping all the air bubbles out of it as well. So any air bubbles out trapped in there, he's just going and tapping them all out. So it's all 100% pure silicone behind it. Now that's what I mean. You want everyone's silicone squirting out everywhere. So we can see here, Josh is starting to clean off his silicone at the top there. So he's using methylated spirits to smooth it all out. That way it's dissolving any residue on the body of the Caravan at the same time. And he's just using a little rubber square, putting it all up onto a piece of paper on the roof, piece of paper towel. Now you'll do this in a couple of stages. So you'll run over the areas, taking all the bulk of stuff off. Then he'll go back over, cleaning it with the square again, making sure you're getting all the residue off. And then he'll go over it all again with the microfiber, making sure that he's cleaning all the residue off again, so it's nice and clean. Then once the mold's fully done and out the front and it's getting a wash, then it'll all get a wipe down as well, making sure that any tiny little bits of residue come off of it, and we get a perfectly clean surface.
One right on the bottom, you reckon?
Yeah, right in the bottom corner there.
Okay, so you can see Josh is now using his microfiber to clean any excess silicone residue on the body of the Caravan itself. So he's making sure he's not touching the silicone bead itself, just the body of the Caravan. So now this ensures that, once again, we're not going to get dust or dirt sticking to the body of the Caravan when you go down a dirt road. And it gives you that nice clean finish look, so looks good. So we'll get this all cleaned up, and then I think the next stage I'll show you is us putting the infill in. Okay, there we go. So we're putting in J-mould infill now. So making sure that we silicone over all screw heads. And the infill just is basically just a rubber molding that gets installed to cover the screw holes. Nice and easy. There we go. Now, at the join up there where Luke is, we went 100 mil past the join. So then that way it's sort of staggered with the join and the join of the J-mould and the join of the infill. So pretty easy. Then Josh is just going to go cut the wings off down the bottom there where we're running it around the 90. So it looks nice and neat as well. Once it's all, and then we go and clean it all off once it's all cleaned up. So you'll see a bit of silicone squirting out, like things like that. We'll go clean all that off. It should look nice and neat. Then the last final stage will be just doing that little bit of roof seal at the top there, which you can't really see right now. But we'll get that all done, and then this job will be done. All done. There we go. Look at that. So brand new mold, and it doesn't even have a join here. So runs all the way from down there, all the way up to the first join there, and look, it looks really nice. It's all dead straight. The silicone beads are all nice and clean. See there. Same on the back side here. And at the top there, we got the roof seal. Now, it's not the traditional way that we do our roof seals. We like them a little bit neater than that normally, but we're copying that side over there. So we sort of got to make it look symmetrical from the back. So there we go. That's a mold replacement. And you can see they're not super easy. There's a lot of hours and time that goes into them. And you know, that's why they're not cheap. But there you go.